Today we're off to Stonewall, Manitoba, and Tracy and I are going up to Stonewall, Manitoba because I can get my hands on a Polar wood stove, which I've heard lots about and been reading about online. And I found a fella up in Stonewall that distributes them by the name of Travis, and so we're going up to meet Travis and take a look at a Polar wood stove. Manitoba. You guys are just north of Stonewall, and this is Travis and his partner Mel, and we connected with each other over Facebook because you are involved with outside wood boilers, but that's not all that you're involved with. So I know, Mel, you've got a lot to do with this. Like what else is involved up here?
Well, we sell firewood here for Wigwam firewood sales. Our goal is to produce and sell highly qualified and competitive priced firewood for heating and recreational purposes.
So with all the firewood and whatnot you have here, it also works out pretty good with the boilers that Travis is involved with.
Yes, it works out really good. We work hand in hand. We're pretty good partners.
Yeah. So we have a lot of wood here, Trav. Where do you get your wood from?
We get it all sourced locally from northern Manitoba.
And what kind of wood are we looking at?
So we have access to tamarack, jack pine, poplar. You can also get oak, ash. They could pretty well the whole wide variety.
And I noticed that we're on a farm site too here. Do you do some farming?
Yeah, we're a smaller farm, not very large. Any given year we do rent some land, so it could be up to 1,200 acres. Sometimes we're only farming 900.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested to take a look at one of these stoves. So can we go and do that now?
Yep.
Okay. So right now, this is the stove that you're using in your shop that heats your house and the garage here. So this is a Polar. Tell me what I'm looking at here.
So this is a Polar G2 Plus.
So how many gallons in a Polar G2 Plus?
Of water volume there's 200 gallons.
200 gallons. And this is a gasification unit.
Yes.
So with this stove, Mel, I know that you've got the wood cutting business and different stuff like that. What is it that you like about this stove? I know you've had more than one type of outside wood boiler on the place before. What do you like about this stove?
Well, I really like how it mainly looks like a freezer, and it's so child-proof with this. Sure, it is simple to open. That's what I actually really enjoy, is it's one step to open the front door and then another step to open the other, instead of like at the side. I found there's a lot of steps you had to do. This one's super simple. It's easy for anybody to use and access. Okay. Can you walk me through this stove, Trav? What is it you like about this stove?
Sure. So yeah, there's a few things. There's no electronics to go bad. And remember, you can always add a few features off to the side, like using the Inkbird
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And also using a Wi-Fi timer to monitor when the boiler is, like, if you want to shut it off manually through Wi-Fi. And it also gives you more flexibility.
I know, like briefly, we've looked at this stove before, but this one has 3 doors on the fronts. Can you explain the 3 different, like basically you have the door that opens and then there's 3 doors. Can you go through those for me?
Yeah, so the top loading door, that's what we call it. That's where all of your wood, that's where you charge the wood.
Yep.
So now, on top of the wood loading door, you will see 2 little channels. So those channels are a one step. You open up the door and you wait approximately 15-30 seconds to allow the air to change direction. So after the air changes direction, you're going to get a smokeless reload. It's pulling the smoke all into that bypass, so you're able to load it without an extra step of using a bypass. It's just a very simple unit.
I think too, you had mentioned, like, when you open this door, there's a switch on this door that changes the speed of the fan. So it's by opening up the door, you actually start the process, this big door.
Yeah. So being that the Polar uses an ECM, constant torque motor, the switch on the door allows the fan to bump up to max speed, and that way it is able to reclaim all that smoke to prevent it from being inside when you're loading.
Okay.
So the ECM motor is what I feel makes this furnace work as well as it does. If there's a blockage on the nozzle, it will ramp up to try to clear it. So that without any extra electronics, the motor's able to do that on its own. It's going to have the lowest energy consumption and also very powerful. It's also going to last 2 to 3 times longer than a conventional suction fan.
Suction fan. So the back of the stove, what are we going to see at the back of the stove?
So at the back of the stove, it's all insulated with fiberboard reflective insulation. You have your dampers. So you have on each side of the stove, you have the primary and the secondary air. So those are all adjustable. They're factory set to get the best outcome, the best burn without any guessing.
Okay. But they are adjustable if a person needs to adjust them or
Correct. This is the Aquastack. This is the primary Aquastack, and this is the high limit Aquastack. So there's a fail safe. If anything sticks, it has it covered.
Yeah.
Here is going to be your supply side, your shunt pump, circulating pump to prevent stratifying the water.
Yep.
And also your return and your supply. So the G3 will have 3 ports. The G2 Plus and G2 only have 2. Your clean out, you will use this tool, or you can use a homemade tool. So you can put a pail underneath and you just pull the ash forward. This is right below the turbulators, so year end makes it really easy to get every last bit of ash out.
So I know by being on some of the Facebook sites and listening to guys talk and stuff like that, a lot of talk about the turbulators. So what does a Polar have for turbulators?
So a Polar, so just to start off, we're able to get away with only using 7 turbulators. We're able to bring the actual temperature of the exhaust down to the point I can stick my hand in it.
You can stick your hand in the exhaust?
Yes, no smoke. I can have the full secondary burn, refractory brick, red hot, and I can still stick my hand in the exhaust.
So that's
not just for a second, for 10, even up to 30 seconds.
So that's basically the product of the stove getting the most heat out of the wood without throwing it out into the air. And so I think there's a handle that you use to clean the turbulators, which you've probably done lots, Mel. Like you just come out and give the turbulator a couple of swings and then go ahead and stoke it. And how often do you do that?
So you want to do that daily, a few times. It's very simple. You can do it with one finger. Yeah. You don't need to jar it, you don't need to slam it, just rock it back and forth.
What if a fellow was to have problems? What if they stick? Like I've heard of problems with turbulators sticking and whatnot. Like are they easy to get out, or what's the procedure there?
So usually the only time that turbulators will stick is if the stove is constantly idling with high moisture content wood. So it would be more of a operator error.
Okay. So not burning hot enough, or having it stoked too hot, or warmer weather, shoulder months, that sort of thing. Yeah,
and that seldom happens. I've done like a few tests to see if I can even get them to stick. I personally can't simulate it, but there's a first for everything. Yeah. But the beauty of it is if you ever do get your turbulator stuck, there's 2 nuts on each end of the roof, so two screws, take them off, pulls off the section, and it's just a single nut that you twist off, and you have complete access to all the turbulators. They can pull out easy. They're all quick disconnect clips.
So yeah, for me, right now I'm heating my house and my barn. So can I attach 2 different buildings onto this unit? Like, is it? Tell me about the couplings on the back.
So this has boiler return protection, so it prevents too cold of water coming back, which can affect your secondary combustion.
And I'd like to ask you a question just about that, because with me, I never ever worried about that, but now with some of the newer stoves, that is a concern, right? Like you don't want water going to your house at 180 and coming back at 100 degrees. Like there's a, what is it, a 30-degree difference in temperature that a guy should be looking at?
Yeah, typically you don't want return water coming below 140.
Okay.
So it alters the efficiency of the burn when you have too cold of water being sent back.
So when you were talking about that before, there's a mixer on the back, or how is it?
So it's a mixing valve and a boiler protection valve. So that protection valve allows it to keep the water inside the cycle until the water's hot enough in the jacket to mix it off where it hits the right temperature.
So a term that I'm not familiar with is cycling. And cycling, I think I have this understood right, is when the stove fires up, gets the water up to temperature, and then shuts off. So there's a set point, say 180 degrees, and then when it gets down to 160, it kicks back in. Do I have that right, Trav?
Yeah, so the Polar is preset that it's going to be right from the factory. It's all adjustable though. Yep. So it's 180 degree off and approximately 172 on.
So a 10-degree difference there.
Yeah, very, very close.
Yeah. So with my wood stove at home, if I don't get home in time and whatnot and it goes out, I use a Tiger torch to get it going. So what do I need? Like, what do I need to get this thing going? So
when there's firewood in the firebox, the stove will not go out. Even in the event of a power outage, it is designed in a fashion that it has enough natural primary air being introduced to the firebox that it will not go out. It does not require the damper to open every so often. It keeps the fire.
Keeps the fire going. So you do 12-hour stokes on the stove? What's your routine?
Yeah, 12, 14-hour stokes. I always end up loading more than I need. That way, if I am a few hours late back home from work or just late to tending to the stove, it's still got a nice red hot coals waiting for me to throw some logs on for a quick, easy reload. So now, in the shoulder season, being that you don't need to constantly have the stove loaded with wood, so I've just been lighting it once a day, have it turn on for a few hours, and I have my automatic timer click it off when the temperature hits the set point.
Yeah.
So the beauty of that is you aren't having it idling all day. And two, you don't need, in the shoulder season, if you have in-floor heat, you're already storing enough heat in the ground, and your house is going to maintain your set point much longer.
So for me, I have the old cast iron radiator, so that would be a bonus. That would be a big plus.
Yeah, it'd be ultimately a thermal storage,
Yeah.
and you probably only have to have it started up in the mild temperatures for just one or two cycles.
Okay, yeah. Up was conventional or multipass versus gasification. So can you tell me the difference between the gasification and the multipass?
Yeah, so when it even just goes to multipass, there is going to be differences. The whole idea is there's a triangle. There's oxygen, fire, and heat. Like, you got to be able to have all three to create an efficient burn.
Yeah.
So when it all comes down to it, if you don't have enough heat in your firebox, you're going to be sending smoke up the stack. And if you don't have a good heat exchanger, you will not be collecting the heat that's also going through the stack. So it's a very fine line that you got to follow. So now, to answer your initial question, the downdraft has pretty well solved all of those issues. They're the only ones that I've known to be compliant right now to meet the suitable standards for self-sufficient and carbon neutral. So by allowing the gases to go downward, the gases has to go through the coal bed, so they're being heated up to over 2,000 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
The molecular structure does get cracked, and so then now putting into a large refractory brick, where that refractory brick is able to now exceed higher temperatures than you'd even want metal to. Like this, we're talking about forging temperature now. So now you have to get the right ratio of air and the right ratio of smoke. Well, it's not essentially smoke once it gets burned. So now it needs to be properly mixed, and so that's where the downdraft comes into play.
So for a guy like me, this sounds like a lot of complicated stuff. So if I've got what they consider a conventional, but it's not a multi-pass. Basically, it's like two big barrels welded together. And now they have the multi-pass with either updraft or downdraft, or is downdraft always gasification?
So the downdraft would always be considered gasification in the sense that it's in so it's essentially in a big box, starved of oxygen, and it's where the wood paralyzes and actually off gases, and then once it's pulled through the coal bed and put into a more oxygen-rich environment, that's where the flame actually is going to take place.
So for someone like me that's looking for a unit, last year I burnt, say, 25 cord of wood with my old Aquafarm between the house and the barn. If I was to get a newer gasification unit, how much could I expect, or how much would you think I could reduce that amount of wood?
So, like it's all going to depend on like your heating requirements, but being that your old boiler didn't have a multi-pass, also was just a plain metal drum.
Yeah.
It was not able to achieve the high enough temperatures, and it wouldn't even be able to claim the heat leaving the firebox either. So now to go more in depth, you might even save more than the 60% that they claim.
So I could be going from 25 cord down to, say, 12 or 15 cord.
Yeah, you should be able to. You could very well hit the 10 cord mark.
Wow, I would be. That's pretty exciting. So.